All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Evolve and Elevate with Erica. I am your host, Erica Bishop, and I am so glad to be here with you all this evening. I wanted to make sure we get right in and get started because I have a very special guest with me on tonight. Someone that I met some years ago when I was in the real estate game, and he was a productivity coach, I believe, at that time. And we have continued to stay in contact with each other over the years. So I greatly appreciate it. So I'm going to let him introduce himself to you before we get into this dynamic topic tonight on momentum and mastery. And we're going to share some goodies with you as long as you're with us until the end of the show. So I'm going to take a few minutes and let Mr. Spencer Combs introduce himself all the way from Florida.
Yes, thank you. I was actually super excited about having this conversation with you tonight. I think simply because of the proximity where you and I have crossed paths in the past. In any event, my name is Spencer Combs. I I personally believe that professional development, right, the money you seek, all the things you want to have, the professional development always happens on the backside of personal development because businesses don't actually grow. People do. Businesses don't compete. Their leaders compete. And so I've spent a greater part of now, well, 2 decades now, working on systems, programs, workshops, now a book, anything that I can do to help create the frameworks so that business owners and business leaders can have unshakable progress in their profit, their productivity, and having a greater level of purpose. How about that for a mouthful?
That is awesome. So, just to kind of let you know what this is about and to let you know how awesome this whole situation is tonight, is because Spencer's not going only going to be with us tonight. He's going to be with us to the next 2 weeks after that because he's going to break down his framework within momentum and mastery. But before we get into that, I just want you to share, Spencer, if you can, a little bit about yourself. Because I was reading the beginning of your book and I kind of teared up a little bit about your story. And how did you get to the place where you decided that Momentum and Mastery was a book that you needed to write?
The book itself and the topics in the book have been through all the different experiences and the work that I've done as a coach, working with so many different business leaders over that 2 decade span. Um, if I rewound the clock, there were really three pivotal moments in my life. One, when I was 18, I had surrendered to some level of ministry. Few people, sometimes I mention that, and they're like, "Oh, this guy, he went to Bible college." Yeah, I went to Bible college, and then of course they chuckle because they hear me, like I'm the cussing preacher, and they think it's kind of funny. But I there was that moment when I knew I needed to be doing more at 18, and what I was really looking for was some sort of validation to do something with my life, and so I went about the business of doing what we call in the book the mechanics. So I got real good into like working on doing and how to do, right? So I got in the real estate business. And then in 2001, I had the pivotal moment that's actually mentioned at the beginning of the book where I woke up in the back of an ambulance and I was completely restrained. Had no idea what had happened because I was so fully restrained I couldn't move at all. They had taped me to the board. And so we're riding in the ambulance, and I could see out of one eye. I looked over at the EMT, and I was able to squeeze out. I said, "What happened?" Right? Same question you're probably having. And he very nonchalantly told me, he said, "You had a seizure while driving, and you're headed to Lexington Medical Center." And Lexington, of course, this all happened in there in the Midlands of South Carolina. And so it was 2001, October the 1st, that all took place. And looking back, of course, it was easy for me to realize, Spencer, you have more to you than what you have right now. You were spared. And if anybody ever wanted to question that, try hitting a telephone pole at 50 miles an hour and crossing 2 lanes of traffic. I was only about 15 yards from jumping the bridge over on the I-20. So in any event, I firmly believe that the Lord spared me that day. And so I kicked it in higher gear and I began to focus and work on the mindset portion of what we'll probably talk about, I'm guessing, next week. The mindset, right? I started focusing on mindset and figuring out how to do the mindset and the mechanics, and that went off really, really well. But it wasn't until very recently that I began to unpack what it means to move and take action, right? The movement portion of the whole trinity that we call mindset, mechanics, and movement, right? And so through all of this, I had been coaching and working with individuals. And while doing that, I started to realize it was a little bit of a pattern that some people fall into one framework or the other, and they do it naturally. Some people I would sit down and talk to, and I'd say, tell me what you want to do, how you want to get where you want to go. And they were all about momentum. They took action. They had lots of energy and passion about what they wanted to do, and they were really, really good at that. And then there was a whole another camp of people, which I think, I mean, I haven't really like done mathematics on this, like as a study, but I think a lot of people do their best to focus on the mastery portion of it, which is the mechanics and mindset. And so they want to get it right before they go and take massive action. And so that's the mastery side of this. And so out of necessity for me and having worked with so many people over time, we had to figure out a fast way. Business owners don't have time to shoot in the dark, right? Right. Business owners don't have time to be sitting there trying to, they need answers and need them quick. And so I was able to, over time, figure out which one of these two camps were they good at, movement, right? Or what we call momentum, or mastery. Which one of those two are they naturally good at? And then we would just cross pollinate, train them the other side of the whole thing, and they would immediately have a much bigger result in their life and in their business. So to answer your question, momentum and mastery has been being worked on for years. I was doing this even when I was doing the real estate productivity coaching with when you and I met. However, we really went to work this past year codifying it.
Awesome. So, as you all are coming in, please share to your other platforms and let them know that we are here tonight because honestly, just out of kindness in his heart, you're really getting a awesome, very intuitive and coaching program is what's really happened tonight because we're talking about momentum and mastery here with Mr. Spencer Combs. And he was breaking down his framework, which is about mechanics, movement, and mindset. And we're going to start with the mechanics of it tonight. But one of the things you also talked about was having unshakable momentum. Unshakable momentum. And as I was reading, I was getting so many jewels just in the first couple of chapters of reading this book. Talk about unshakable momentum and what does that really look like in life as life continues to do what it does.
Yeah. Everything we do is branded unshakable. And the reason for that is because it's really one word to exemplify what it means when you are operating at a high level of momentum and a high level of mastery. When you have those two things together and you're operating at the highest level, there's not the only thing that's going to shake you. I literally just made this as a post the other day. The only thing that's going to shake you is the one who created you.
Right.
If you can understand how to create momentum and build it and maintain it and do what needs to be done, and step into the qualified champions framework, which is the mastery framework, right? You're going to end up with the unshakable life. You're going to end up with an unshakable business. And that's what I'm here to do. Life is going to be constantly throwing at you, distractions, delusions. We talk about this in the book. They're going to throw, it's going to throw at you demands, right? You got to pay your bills, and I got to do, but I know I can do more, Spencer, but you don't understand. I got to pay these bills, or I got to take care of my parents, or I got to take care of my kids. All these demands keep people shaken to the core. And until you learn how to really look deep and unpack, right, the drift to drive framework, which is the momentum framework, and the qualified champions framework, when you do all of this, you become way more unshakable. And that's a life that I believe we were called to have, not one of fear, right? And so to answer your question, unshakable momentum is really half the equation. It's momentum is only a piece of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mastery is the other side of it.
So before we kind of get into the mechanics of the framework, many leaders struggle with balancing profit, productivity, and purpose. And I know as you have broken it down, you give us this framework to help us to understand how to balance all of it. But when we're talking about leaders leading other leaders, um, how do we sometimes fall out of balance with that?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're taking on, I'm trying to lead you, but I'm also trying to have balance myself and lead by demonstration. How do we help gain that balance that's necessary
Mm.
to keep moving forward?
All right. Well, let me first rewind just a little bit because um, what I believe we actually are going to talk about tonight was going to be movement,
Okay.
right?
Either way, however you want to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
it, that's the way we need to go, we'll go.
And there's a reason for that, and that's what you would put out there too. But that there's a reason why movement, because it's really the fire that's going to create the energy necessary for that business leader to understand how to keep moving forward, even when they're feeling a little unbalanced. Right? Anytime someone brings up to me a conversation around balance, we have to remember that we're talking about life balance.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are thinking balance moment to moment, right? Today's balance, right? Or just for this next hour, I need to be in balance, right? I, the truth is that many times your life is going to be out of balance if, in fact, you are moving toward a particular target.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact is, you need to understand what that is. Otherwise, you're going to always feel like you're out of balance because you don't know if you're moving or making progress or not,
Right.
right? So I do believe that people need to pay attention to the balance and so on for themselves. And, it's a big deal to talk about self care and all those types of things these days. Though I agree that those things are necessary, most of the time, the context that people are bringing in are usually is in a form of an excuse to keep them from doing what they really should be doing.
Wow.
So, and by the way, I'm aware sometimes I'll say something and somebody gets their toes hurt. I listen.
We take it all over here. We don't hold no, we don't hold back at all.
Well, one of the things we mentioned in the book, and when it talks about being a champion,
Mm-hmm.
champions look for the truth, not validation. They're not interested in validation; they want the truth. So if you're here and it's 8 in the evening for you on the East Coast, maybe it's is only 5 o'clock where you are in the West Coast. Wherever you're listening to this at, you have an interest to be a champion. You want to be that top performing person. If that's the case, then you're not interested in validation for your position. You want the truth because the most important thing to you is going to be that outcome that you have decided I'm after. And so sometimes life is going to be a little bit out of balance as I move and progress towards that outcome.
Awesome. That's good. That's real good. I think because we fight to have balance always along the way because we think that that gives us that peace and that harmony. And when things are out of balance, they're quote unquote out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who are control freaks and we want everything to be in our control, we fight for that balance instead of really going with the flow of
Mm-hmm.
where things are to get us to the next place because you have that ebb and flow in life, right? You have that tug and that pull. And you also talked about having congruency. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that word congruency because as I have taught, coached, and just live my life through emotional intelligence and being certified in, and that's the framework that I teach from. It's so important to have congruency, but understanding everything is not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we wait for that place of perfection, even when it comes to movement, mindset, and mechanics. We want all these things to be aligned, and we find ourselves in this great place of procrastination. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it's an excuse and it never allows you to get anywhere. You also talked about stagnation and delusion. Oh my God, it's so much. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you as we start getting into the movement part to help us really move along and get our footing of where we need to so that we can have the movement and momentum that's necessary.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna have a miniature master class tonight.
I
Okay.
love it. Thank you
And
so much.
we're gonna have master class tonight. We're gonna have next week and the week after that. So, but before I can really get into the three M's, those three critical factors, I need to help everybody understand that for you to be successful, because that's why you're here. You want success, right? And that's such a overused word. There's so many gurus and people throwing big fancy claims around the whole conversation. At the end of the day, you want to see progress. That's why you're here. You want to get that one piece of information that's going to help you move forward. Those three critical factors are necessary. I figured out early when I was in, as a young man, I was constantly trying to figure out how to do things. Well, clearly you have to have strong mechanics. And we'll talk about that in 2 weeks from today. But the mechanics of this whole thing, if you don't have it, you're going to have a problem, right? Well, second to that, in addition to that, is mindset. If you don't have the mindset attached to that, to the mechanics of how to do whatever it is you're looking to go to do, you're gonna also have a problem, right? Got to have a congruency between those two. And then the third factor is movement. If you're not taking action, you can forget it. I mean, it's just, whatever at that point. But what happens when you take these three things and put them on a graph and you start really studying this for a minute, you'll start noticing that there are four patterns that emerge. And you're probably in one of these four patterns. So while I go through this, it's going to help you recognize which of these three you probably need to lean in on and which of the three you're leaning on too much. Because at the end of the day, we're looking for that congruence between all three. Okay. And have I made that pretty clear, Errica? Is that
Oh,
good?
you did. This is great. I'm leaning in and I also have my pen. So I will ask anyone, please take notes and stay with us to the end because he has something special to give away. So make sure you take notes and put any questions in the chat. Please make sure that as you are here, you are sharing this because we don't get this often when we get a mini master class like this. So I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So if you drew three circles and did a Venn diagram, if you're familiar with that, right? Draw three circles and have them overlap, you're going to find that there are four empty spaces because those three circles are going to be mindset, mechanics, and movement, right? But those spaces where they overlap, here's how this looks. If you are, let's say, frustrated right now, like you're just constantly frustrated, and by the way, somebody right now in the audience here, when you guys hear this, you're going to think, well, can you be frustrated in one part of your life but not in other parts of your life? Yes, you can actually be operating in different places in different parts of your life. But let's just look at your business. If you're frustrated, it's probably because you have a solid set of mindset skills and you're taking action. And because of that, you're devoid of mechanics. And when you're not doing the work the way it should be done, right? The way it needs to be done, right? You're avoiding certain activities. It's a recipe for frustration because you believe it, you've got a focus for it, you've got all these types of things. But I usually refer to that as someone who's being so heavenly minded, they're no earthly good. That's a frustration. Well, the cool thing is that if that's what you're feeling, then now all we have to do is start working on mechanics. So be here in 2 weeks. We'll help you with that. Okay. But maybe it's not frustration you're feeling. Maybe it's more of I'm in a rut and I'm burning out. Like it's just, no matter what I do, because I know what I'm doing, Spencer, right? You've got the mechanics and you're taking action, but you're missing the mindset piece. That's a recipe for burnout. That's a recipe for hitting a glass ceiling and can't seem to get past it. You have to have a fundamental mental shift, a mindset shift to change the possibilities for you. I mean, it make it sound simple, but that really is all it is, right? It's a shift in the mindset.
So when we talk about mindset, before you go
Mhm.
ahead, all the people that you have worked with, and I know you say you see a lot of patterns, you see a lot of correlation. What do you find is the biggest struggle why people have such a hard time shifting when it comes to mindset? Because it sounds simple. You make it sound so easy to do, just make a decision and keep it moving. But what is that place that keeps people from struggling with the mindset so that they
I,
can move forward?
I think what we're going to talk about tonight, when I get down to the movement portion, is going to help lay the foundation for
Okay.
mindset, right? Because there's 5 building blocks in all the mindset mechanics. We're going to talk about that in the next 2 weeks. But I think once you get the foundational piece of the movement, it's going to set the tone for everything else. Okay, so at the end of the day, though, just understanding what's going on here so far, you're either frustrated, you're burning out, or maybe you're feeling stagnant. Stagnation is usually happening because like the mindset pieces are all there. Like you even could you I see coaches like this, they got it. They know how to help everybody else. And they know how to do the thing, right? You want to go out here and make these sales, or you want to go build this business, you want to do, they know how to do it all, but for some reason it just can't seem to get it going. That's a movement conversation. So we work on the movement piece, right? That's 3 of them. The fourth pattern is going to be someone who is impatient. And the impatient ones are going to be the ones that have some level of congruence, but what you're looking to do is sharpen the skill, sharpen the axe right now. Which one of these 3 do I need to lean in on? How do I level up the whole process? It's okay if you're feeling impatient, right? But the cool thing is these emotions that we have can be a window into what we're actually dealing with. What's the real problem, right? So that sets the tone for the whole thing. What I'd like to go over tonight is the conversation around movement.
Okay.
And movement is the technical name for us is drift to drive. It's the drift to drive framework. All of us are drifting on some level. You guys ever felt like you were drifting?
All the time.
I'm looking at all the time. Yeah. Well, let's not villainize the concept of drifting,
Mhm.
because, and I do this at the Unshakeable Weekend event. I help people understand drifting is not necessarily the enemy per se, because we all want to be on some kind of an automatic. We don't want to have to think about everything. But at the same time, understand that your drift is basically your reality. And if you don't like what your reality looks like right now, that's the drift you're in. I will point out quite often, too, that your drift is quite possibly someone else's dream. You put that in your pipe and smoke it.
That's good. As a matter of fact, I'm writing that one down.
Your drift might be someone else's dream. But part of the reason why we stay stuck and don't move is because we have never made the decision or had the dream or the desire or the disturbance enough to move ourselves out of whatever level of drift we're in. So, how do we break from the drift and get where we want to go? I'm going to give you a small formula. I don't remember if I even put this in the book, Errica. So, I don't remember if I put this in the book, but a little formula. For the longest time, a lot of business owners and business leaders and trainers, they get up and they tell you need to know what your big why is. You ever heard that before, Erica? All the time.
All the time. Hmm.
Yeah. You need to know what your big why is. Well, as much as I understand the theory behind what they're looking for there, um, I unfortunately have never gotten really good results with people when I start talking about a big why, because it almost always ends up being very large, enigmatic, like, well, my kids are my big why. It's a very popular one. Or, I mean, if we did this for long enough, let's just cut the chase. You're going to end up telling me something like, I want to build wells in Africa. You know, it's like these really big things because you feel guilty for saying something small. I don't think working on the why is the first thing you should be working on. First question you should be asking yourself is a big what? What do you want? Because if you clarify what you want without shame or judgment, right? Because one person's going to have a totally different thing come out of their mouth than somebody else, right? One person says, I want to have a Ferrari. The other person says, I want to donate $50,000 to my church. It doesn't matter to me what you tell me because it's not so much the thing, by the way, it's what is it about that that moves you? And so we take the process, we go through a process, 4Ds. The first one we almost always talk about is dream. You have to have a dream, but not so much just a dream for yourself. Sometimes you just need to put yourself in uncomfortable positions that are outside of your current reach. When was the last time you visited a car dealership or went and looked at a luxury home?
I did it today.
Yeah, there we go.
Today.
Right? When was the last time you went and experienced a lifestyle that was way beyond or even just beyond what you currently can deal with, right? The reason it's important, and some people shut this down. They're like, no, I believe I should be more pragmatic. You're the one that definitely needs to go do this. Because when your brain doesn't have the opportunity to even think it's possible, and you're so focused on what's probable, you're going to struggle with clarifying the path in between. So the first thing we have to do is get our mind, get your brain expanded by exposing yourself to much bigger things. The story I always tell with this is when my wife and I, we went for our 15-year anniversary, went to Europe. And part of that trip was we went to Cannes in France. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you that don't know where Cannes, France is, this is where billionaires go and play.
Yes.
The boats were not boats. These were friggin' ships out there with helipads. Like they had their own helicopter pads on these boats. It was ridiculous the level of money that was going on. And when you're walking around and you see, and I know enough, if I see a 300 SL that's like from the 60s, a Mercedes, that thing is super expensive. We're talking way into the six figures, right? If not $1 million for that car. Mm-hmm. And it's wild, of course, riding around in Ferraris like they're Buick. It's just, but your brain starts trying to, it's like, what in the, right? And you then go internal with that discussion. Mm-hmm. That's where you need to it's okay. Just start being curious. How do they get there? What do they do? Are they really any different than me? But you have to dream. And maybe you don't go to Cannes, France to stretch out your brain, but it doesn't mean that you can't go to a restaurant maybe that's a little bit more than you normally would spend. Right? Buy that one thing if you've got the money. If you don't have the money, go online and start. For me, I'm constantly, because I really want to buy an Aston Martin at some point. Okay, I'm constantly looking at them. I can't afford one right now, but that doesn't mean that I don't know what it looked like, where I could get one, how much they are, all that kind of stuff. That's how I expand my mind. It's important. My wife and I, every year, we do a planning retreat. We spend 3 to 4 days. We go do something that's opulent, and we set our goals for the next year, map out a plan and everything. Part of that is a dreaming process. My mind just went to one of our planning trips years ago. We didn't have a whole lot of money. I literally... Some of you are going to be like, well, that sounds like a lot of money to me. But and it is. But I said, here's $500. We're going to go into this mall, and you're going to spend all $500 in the next 2 hours. And you're going to, and it cannot be on anyone else. It's got to be on you. And when your mind has been so suppressed financially, and then you really struggle with, how am I going to use this $500? Some of you hear this and you're like, $500, man, I buy it on one, I spend it on one thing, right? But if you're coming from a mindset of scarcity, you're going to struggle with that, because you're going to be like, well, I should be, I could be, I need to, right? And all these different things. I have a friggin' bottle of cologne right now that I bought from them that I still have. I paid $100 for it. I was like, dang, right? Some of you are like, that's not that big of a deal. That's a dream exercise, stretching it out. That's the point of doing that whole thing. Does that make sense to you? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I practice that. Yes.
Okay. Well, here's the funny thing is, if you draw 4 squares, so if you draw one big square and then cut it into 4, put dream in the top left corner, then next to that, you're going to put the word desire. Okay. So dream and desire is the more aspirational side of this whole thing. You want to get into movement. You want to get yourself going. You got to have a dream and you got to have a desire. The truth is that once you start doing the dreaming, you're going to end up with your mind is eventually going to start talking about, I would like, it'd be nice. That would be nice. I want to have that. I want that too. Right. You need to capture those discussions. We have exercises for that in the book. We actually talk about it. But if you capture this and do like a magic wand story or whatever, it's not so much the things as much as it is what the things represent. And so what we teach in the Unshakable Weekend event is we actually help you capture that on paper and then turn around and write out, what are the end values, not the means values, right? Somebody says, I want to make $1 million. Nobody wants a stack of paper with dead notables pictures on it. It's not the paper. It's what the $1 million is going to do for them.
Correct.
So what is that? And then what is that? Right? And you keep asking, what that gives me a sense of what? We start extrapolating basically someone's value system. They're yours. They're your hierarchy of values. Truth is that, Errica, you and I could have the same 3 words, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they may not be in the same order because we have a different hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you begin to really get into this, you start to figure out kind of what moves you and why you get moved that way.
Mm-hmm.
What are you really after? The truth is, too, is that we usually go in with number 3 so I can get to number 2 so I can get to number 1. When you stop and realize that you already have access to all these values and you don't have to chase anything to get it, you can stand or come in from a position of power. Is that enough?
This is great. I mean, the phenomenal. I've written my 4 squares. I have my dream and my desire. And as a matter of fact, when you said it, I just went to a house today. My fiance and I, we went to a house today, and we were just like, "This is it. Like, this is it." And we talked about it all the way back, and it was like, what do we need to do to achieve it? Like, we could see ourselves in it. We could see the family in it. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer of that. I will tell you, a good friend of mine, I call her my sister friend. She's one that fits all those different categories. Her husband was so kind. This is when I was in financial services, to take us to Boca Raton.
Mm.
That was my expansion, right? That was my first expansion trip. And
Yeah.
I went to Boca Raton, and to just see it, feel it, smell it, people on the yachts, looking at that big peak palace of a place, I was just like, oh, this is living. That's just one of my favorite places to go. And then I stepped out on faith and went to Johannesburg, South Africa,
Mm.
and to just be there and to be at the Nelson Mandela Center, and just
Mm.
all the different things that you get to touch and feel. And it's like, this is doable. Like, but what do you need to do and once you stretch your mind, there is no going back. There is no
Very
going
true.
back. And it breeds a desire in you, right? It
Mm-hmm.
does. And
Mhm.
I have a dream car, and every time I see it, I speak to it, and I say, you know what? You're gonna be in my driveway with paid in full, title in hand. I say hello every time I see it. I say hello, and it's just one of those things that you have to do.
I love it. Yeah. So, by the way, I got the privilege of working in Miami for 14 months with a brokerage there,
Mm-hmm.
and I told you I'm an Aston Martin fan. They have a building. It's a condo, the Aston Martin building.
Oh,
Look it up. The penthouse, $50 million.
oh,
Comes with a $3 million race car you can't even put on the road. Like what? Why? You know. But all of this part is really fun,
mm-hmm.
right? Talking about the aspirational stuff of dreams and desires,
Mm-hmm.
and really digging in deeper and figuring out what it is you want and why you want it and that kind of thing. That's really cool. However, some people are naturally, they will lean in that direction, and it sounds like you lean in that direction. It's pretty natural for you to dream and talk about your desires, and some people struggle with this side of the coin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, some people really do, because it's like, I need to be pragmatic about it. Well, then you're going to love the second side of this discussion in a second. But the truth is that if you struggle with these two, you need to probably lean in on it the more. If you are leaning in on it too much, then you probably need to listen to the other two. Okay. I told you these are frameworks. This is going to work for you when you sit down and start working your way through it. Okay. So now I have a dream and I have a desire. Naturally, you're going to fall into what we call disturbance,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to start getting disturbed.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of Americans are doing their best to stay numb, maintain status quo. They don't want the super highs and they don't want the super lows, right? I don't. We're riddled with a society of massive amounts of anxiety and depression, right? And so we medicate and chemicalize ourselves into this middle of the road so that we can live our lives. Folks, I'm here to tell you that's not living your life. But let me stay on track. If you really want to create momentum and to create the energy necessary to see yourself move forward with a massive amount of resilience and be unshakable, you're going to have to learn how to tap in to the disturbances. There are things in your childhood and the way you were raised that bother you, right? Like my second grade teacher that told me, Spencer, open your mouth, right? Nobody can listen to you talk. Look at me now, Mrs. Sneed. I'm on Errica Bishop's show, right? Uh, we could go on and on with all these different, but there's, being asked repetitively as a child, what are you, dumb?
Oh
Right?
my.
Write those things down. You can use them for fuel. If your family life was jacked up, well, welcome to the club. Just about all of us had a jacked up childhood, right? I could tell you how I was raised by two women in the 80s and the 90s. Let me ask you, did you know were any of your friends in a gay household? I
Mm-hmm.
was.
Wow.
What it's like to have people, your friends can't come over because you got two moms. The hell out of here. Anyway, the frustrations, right? All the things that were happening in your life, you can use it for fuel.
Mm-hmm.
You with me?
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
You need to find ways to get disturbed. One of the exercises that we talk about in the book is the 100 reasons why. If you will take yourself and get into that huge aspirational state of what you want and why you want it and see yourself there, you're going to get yourself so worked up, and then start writing down all the reasons why you must make it happen, why it must be done now, and why you're the only one to get it done. Those are the three criteria for threshold, because that's what we're looking for. Threshold. People don't make movements or move forward until they create a threshold. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to write something down, write this down. You don't need motivation. You need emotional or neurological leverage. That's what you need. And that's what this is. This is a conversation around how to create the leverage necessary internally so that you will then take action even when you don't necessarily feel like it or your body is trying to tell you otherwise.
That's good. Now say that one more time for the people in the back that might have missed.
You don't need motivation. You need emotional or neurological leverage. You can tell I went to Bible college because I can start sounding like I'm preaching.
You already preaching. Okay, you already preaching. I hear it. You already preaching.
Got some. Hey, if you're listening to this and this is good for you right now, you can just say amen in the comments. Okay,
Amen.
love to hear it. I'm gonna tell you what. There was a lady in a nursing home one time. She ran that room. She had gout in her feet, but she sat there and with her. She had a cane, and when I'd go in there, she would like run that room, tell everybody what to do. One day I got up to preach, and she pointed her cane at me directly, and she said, and I was getting real nervous because I was young. I was like 20. I was thinking, oh Lord, right? And she points her cane at me, and she goes, "Ride that pulpit, son." I, I was like, "I'm on it, lady. I'm on it, honey. Let me keep working at it." But we got to look, guys. You have to find. You got to dig deep. Why it must be done, why it must be done now, and why I'm the only one to do it. No one is coming to rescue you. It doesn't need to wait until tomorrow, and it must be done. See, when those three things don't come together is where you end up kind of just drifting along in discussion. Think about that. Those of you that are in sales, is that not the trifecta necessary to get someone to make a decision to move forward?
It is.
It's got to be done. You need this, right? Nobody else. There's no other decision makers. You're the person. And it's got to be done now. We're not waiting for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 years. Right now. Sign the paperwork. Let's go, right? You got to do this for yourself. And so when you get yourself in a high state of desire and everything's moving, you're going to start getting disturbed and you're going to start writing down all the reasons. And the more you start writing down, the more disturbed you're going to get. I'm going to encourage you to keep writing reasons down. Some of them might not be so friendly. Some of them might be super harsh, right? Because you right? Because you've been called dumb or you are dumb. Right? Sometimes we just got to call ourselves what we are in the moment, right? And I'm not saying you got to be overly difficult with yourself the whole time, but in this particular exercise, you have got to create a state of such a massive amount of disturbance that it creates a threshold. And you will now have an emotional moment that you won't be able to come back from. Now, will you be able to fall back to your drift? Yes, you can if you don't bring in number 4, the 4th D. So if you're writing these in, by the way, Errica, the disturbance should have been over or underneath the word desire.
Okay.
Okay. Now, to the left of that is the word dream. I'm sorry, not dream, decision. My apologies. Decision. A true decision cuts off other options. You've now made the decision, this is what I'm moving towards. Those are in big things and little things. Am I making the decision to eat differently? Am I making the decision to make those phone calls? Am I making the decision right now that are in alignment with where I'm headed? What all these things I've been talking about. This is how we generate energy. All 4 of these have to be there. Where dreams and desires are more aspirational. Disturbance and decisions are more desperational, right? Where dreams and decisions, now if you're looking at the block you've got written down, the left-hand side, that's all external. Desires and disturbances are internal. Mm-hmm. So now you have a map. You have a little bit of a map. You can look at it and kind of decide which one of these do I really need to put some energy into. If you're kind of like, I don't really know where to start with the dreaming, because it'll naturally lead to desires And those desires will eventually get you disturbed enough to where you'll have to make some decisions about what you want to do about it. Here's what I want everybody to know tonight, and then be ready to bring your friends back next week.
Yes.
Because if you do these, if you really chew on this for the next couple of days, for the whole week, if you will lean in on these four things and really work through it. If you go to momentumandmastery.com, I'll send you a copy of this. And then I actually send you a digital version when you order it from my site. You can go to Amazon and get it, pay more if you want to, or you can get it from my site. I send it to you, and then you also get a digital version. Okay. Um, but if you'll really marinate on this for the week, let me give you. Y'all want some Bible tonight?
Give it to us. Give it to us.
You know the word. You're familiar with the word meditate. Meditate. Meditate on the word, on the Lord. Uh, some pastors like to explain where the word meditate comes from. This might sound a little gross, but if you didn't know it, it comes from the same word that we use for chewing the cud.
Mm-hmm.
Cows have three stomachs. And it's because they eat it, goes down one, and they burp it up, and then they chew it again, and they swallow it, and then they burp it up one more time, and they chew it up again, and they swallow it. It sounds gross, but here's what I want you to know. You're going to hear this, and you're taking it in kind of a rough edge kind of discussion for tonight. But tomorrow you're going to wake up and you're going to start thinking about this. Mm-hmm. And you're going to go, what are my dreams? How can I get exposed to some of that stuff? Maybe just go online, go look at Expedia.com and start travel places you want to travel to, right? Look at some houses that you would like to get into. And they don't have to be extreme, by the way. They don't have to be the $50 million condo I was referring to. Maybe it's your next move that you really want to see happen in the next 3 years. Or maybe you could afford it. You're just scared of doing it. Go ahead and do that too. Look at that house. Start paying attention to it, right? What would that look like? There's a lot of fear in the conversation if that's what's holding you back. But anyway, for the next few days, take some time. Marinate on this. Marinate on the idea of what do I really want? Why do I want that? What is it that gives me? And then get disturbed. Get stirred up. And then as you get more stirred up, start making some decisions. Maybe I should pick up the phone and make this call. Let me call this. Let me send this email. Let me order this thing. Let me start checking into this, right? Some of you guys want to get into a different career, mm-hmm. but there's like a 2-year, class or something you need to do. It's not going to hurt anybody's feelings if you just at least go research the coursework. Or maybe you need to go ahead and just pull the trigger, make the decision to move forward or enroll, right? So make some choices. What's going to happen though next week? We're going to start talking about the qualified champions framework. There's five building blocks. The very first one is around purpose, and purpose is basically a commitment to an outcome. That's why we do this first. What we just talked about, Errica, all this, because it leads you to the doorstep of mastery. It leads you to the doorstep of a commitment to an outcome, right? The mindset of commitment, the mechanics of an outcome. So I appreciate being here, but I can answer any questions you guys have at this point.
This was so good. I'm telling you, this was so good. If you could give us a little bit of information about your Unshakable weekend event and when you're possibly going to have another one.
So the Unshakeable weekend event is a personal development event. It's a 3-day event. Right now, I've got one scheduled that I'm debating on whether I'm going to just move it into next year. But right now, we've got one up. If you go to spencercombs.com/UWE for Jacksonville, it's a 3-day immersion event where we basically walk you through all of this stuff from a personal development side. Right now, it will lead you to the business end of it over time, obviously. But we really focus in on the 5 areas of your personal life before we start doing business. The cool thing is, since you and I spoke, Errica, I am working on a 1-day business Unshakable business intensive. So it'll be a full day live event where we come together. I have not pulled the trigger on doing it online yet. I want to do a couple of them live first so that I can work out any kind of kinks from there. in any event, yeah, you can go to spencercombs.com, UWE. Probably the coolest thing for anybody to do right now, you're just going to get a flavor for Spencer on a regular basis. If you go to spencercombs.com/text, TEXT, you can get a daily text message from me Monday through Friday, comes out about 7 a.m. And it's basically, I call it your daily dose of momentum and mastery, right? So it's random things that I'll just throw out at you, something to help you kind of get going for the day. So, like this morning's message that went out said, just because it's an opportunity doesn't mean it's relevant to your committed outcome. Stay the course.
Powerful.
Right? That's just one, right? Sometimes they're a little business related. So, like Fridays was having a 100% conversion rate on sales presentation tells you two things. One, you're not going up to bat enough, and two, you're leaving a ton of money on the table.
Now that's a lot to think about.
Right, right. Well, I have real estate people, especially. They're like, "Well, every listing I go on, and they sign paperwork." Well, then clearly you're not going on enough appointments, right? It's just not. You're not getting up to bat enough, honey. Let's just go. But anyway, I could go on and on. But the text thing is probably the coolest way to keep in touch. And it's a human being behind it. I literally am texting it every morning.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much. This has just been absolutely wonderful to be able to have a mini mindset mastery course, uh, intensive coaching program, all impromptu. And you will be here with us the next 2 weeks after that to the end of the month. And please go get your copy of Momentum and Mastery. What I also love about this book is that there are journal prompts along the way. This is an opportunity as you read each section, there are questions for you to answer, for you to have immediate transformation as you're going through this book. It's not that you just read it, get to the end of it, and that's it. You're actually going to be interactive conversations within this, and it's so wonderful. So make sure that you're with us over the next 2 weeks so that you can get the rest of Momentum and Mastery and the framework that he's sharing. And Spencer, I thank you so much for your time tonight. This has been absolutely wonderful. And I'm so grateful that we have kept in touch over the years. And even though you're in Florida and you left South Carolina, I know you did what you had to do, but it's great that we crossed paths and that we have stayed connected. This was absolutely beautiful, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And you guys, please let your teams know if you have some people that you're doing business with and that you are connected to that are in the industry with you. Let them know that we're going to be here the next 2 weeks and share this information with them because this is very powerful and some great information here. So, Spencer, before you go tonight, just share a few more things if you like to leave with the audience tonight before we sign off.
Well, put me on the spot like that. I'm never a loss of words. I will say, but one thing that was burning in my mind, you were talking about, oh, you moved from South Carolina to Florida, ladies, gentlemen. I understand that wasn't just like a whim. That actually came from what I'm talking to you guys about now. 2015, my wife and I sat down and we said, we want to move. We want to move somewhere else. And over the course of 5 years, we determined that in 2020 we were going to move, right? Because my youngest daughter graduated high school that year. And I'm sharing this story with you because I want you to know that you can, things may seem a little insurmountable. It didn't even work out the way I was hoping it did, but I still was unshakable in the process. Because in 2015, when we made that decision, things were going well. I was working at a real estate office. That's where I met Errica originally. And I decided in 2018, because I knew I was going to be moving, to step out of that role because I needed to make an income outside of being locked in on with a specific real estate brokerage, right? And I'd been coaching all along since 2004, but in this scenario, I had to break free so that I could do that. 2020 showed up. I still didn't have any strong path, so I literally took a job selling RVs. Errica, I know nothing about RVs. Okay. Just before the pandemic, moved to Florida ahead of my wife, and I became the top salesperson for that RV dealership that year. In 9 months, I was the number one salesperson. First month I was there, I tied the top salesperson. Not because I was extremely that great. Part of it's because everybody else was freaking out over COVID. I was totally unshakable, right? And then at the end of 21, I then stepped out in faith. I took a position with a large real estate team, and then also began working on all this material you guys are hearing now. So this isn't new. This isn't new. I just want everybody to understand you're 3 to 5 years out from probably making massive changes in your life if you made the decision, right? But you're probably not going to make the decision until you get disturbed enough. And you'll never get disturbed enough if you don't have a deep seated desire to make that happen. And you probably won't have the desire if you've never actually seen it's a possibility for you, for right now, and no one's coming to save you.
That's good. That's good. Well, we thank you so very, very much, you all. And I pray that this was as good for you as it was for us. Spencer, I thank you so much for being with us on tonight. You all, thank you for signing in. Please share this with someone. Please tag someone, like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, connect with Spencer Combs as well, because not only is he a coach, he's a motivational speaker. He is there to help wherever he can with this framework that he has that's really changing and transforming lives. So we thank you for being with us, and make sure that you're here with us again for the next 2 weeks as we continue in momentum and mastery. You all have a good evening. Thank you.